I wasn't drunk when I was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I wasn't drunk. I was sober. Sober always precedes drunkenness. I always was sober before I got drunk. You got to be sober to get drunk. Right? I mean, this is not some kind of crazy metaphysics. This is fact. Now, the perception of the alcoholic sometimes twisted around, I think, as if we're just drunk. I'm sober, then drunk, then sober, then drunk, sober, drunk, sober. That's how my life went. Near the end, I drank a lot, drunk a lot, more than I wanted to be, more than I hoped to be, more than I planned to be. Then I got sober. Day, week. There are people who have had intermittent during their alcoholism of years of sobriety. So AA was never intended to promise us just sober. They cheat us, and they knew that. That's why in the foreword of 12 and 12 it says this: AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can do 4 things. And I'm paraphrasing. It can, 1, expel the obsession to drink. 2, it can enable the sufferer to become happy. 3, and useful. 4, and whole. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous promises. The obsession to drink will leave. You can become happy. You can become useful. And better than anything else, you can feel whole. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't make that up. They tell me that before I even start reading this book. It's in the foreword. It's the 3rd paragraph of the foreword. I didn't make that up. That's not my opinion. The first step in the recovery process is not drink. Can't drink and do this. What is it? Very simple. The first step, young lady or young man, if you've had enough, if you're tired of living a lie, if you've tried to do it 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times, try to stop by yourself. Try to change. And you fail. And you fail. And you fail. And if you just can't go on, and you've reached bottom, you know what bottom is? My opinion. Bottom is not a place. It's not a jail cell. It's not a divorce court. It's not a treatment center. It's not a basement. It's not no money. It's not no friends. It's not no job. It's not indictments. It's not arrests. It often happens when those things are happening. Bottom is a feeling. It's a feeling that I can't live like this, and I know no other way to live. It's a feeling of hopelessness. I can't live like this anymore. I can't live drinking, and I can't live not drinking. It's a feeling, not a place. So when we get in front of these microphones and we start talking about all these places, we're cheating our audience, the newcomer, maybe. Because alcoholism isn't necessarily a treatment center. Look, I'm going to tell you, I'm as much an alcoholic as anybody who is in this room says they're an alcoholic. And I can't prove that to you, because I can't prove to you that I'm an alcoholic. I could talk for hours about what I did and what happened to me, and that doesn't prove I'm an alcoholic. The only way I can prove to you that I'm an alcoholic is a way that I won't do. I won't do it. But I could prove to you I'm an alcoholic. The only way I know how to prove to you that I'm an alcoholic is to drink and let you watch how I live. And then get sober and let you watch how I live. And then drink and let you watch how I live. I do that long enough and you watch long enough, you might say, yes, he's an alcoholic. You have to take my word that I'm an alcoholic, because that's the best you're going to get. Think about that. Bottom is a feeling. What do we want to do? Because we so often want to help everybody, and it's so good. And everything, God, I'll tell you, once we find some sense of recovery here, we can't wait to share it with everybody. And when we see somebody who we see in their eyes the pain that we knew were in ours, we want them to be well, and we want them to be comfortable, we want them to be happy. And sometimes we want it so much for them that we lie about what this is about so they'll stay. And you know what? We can get them to stay sometimes for a week or a month or a year. Sooner or later, they're going to go. Because you can't build a house without a foundation. Because the wind's going to come, the rain's going to come, because that's life. And the name of the game, I was told not when I came here. I'll tell you what lies I was told when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I had people who loved me so much that they said to me, look all you got to do is anything you want to do. Just don't drink and go to meetings. You don't have to take these steps. You don't have to do anything. It's like a smorgasbord. You like it, take it. You don't like it, don't take it. And they told all of us that came in 1971 in my group at that time in Chicago. And in that group, over the course of the year, over 100 newcomers came through that group. It's not the same group that I'm in now. There's only 2 of us still in AA. They loved us so much, they diluted this so much, that they took from us the only medicine that might have saved us. And they did it because they loved us. And they thought maybe that Alcoholics Anonymous is some kind of magic, that if you just sit here long enough, you just get cured in spite of yourself. Now, it is important that we try to do things to welcome newcomers. My opinion, I don't know. Hey, I don't want anybody not to make it. I wouldn't have devoted my life to the beginners' meetings if I didn't care. I don't need attention. I'm a practicing lawyer in Chicago that has had a great deal of success. I don't need an audience. I have an audience every day of my life. I don't need to get dressed up. I get dressed up every day of my life. I don't need any attention. Where I come from, I got all the attention anybody would need. The only reason that I do this, what I do there, is because it works. And if I keep doing it, I keep staying. That's the only reason I do it. And I want them to make it. I sometimes want more for my newcomers than they want for themselves, and that's when I experience pain. When I want recovery more for them than they want it for themselves, I'm on the wrong track. So I don't tell them this is a smorgasbord. I tell them, look it, I don't know what this is. I'm not that smart. So what I did, young man, is I picked up a book that they told me contained the secret. And that book says, if I thoroughly followed the path that the people who made it took, I will make it. And they said, if I am hopeless enough, I'm ready to take certain steps. They said, at first I'm going to balk, and I'm going to try to find softer, easier ways. And as long as I did that, the result would be nil till I let go absolutely. And when I was done, and I felt enough pain, I would then, hopefully, take steps to alleviate the pain. See, that's why this is not an intellectual pursuit. Hey, you got these new people, I don't care if they're 17 or 70. When we tell them don't drink, let me tell you a secret. Everybody in their life has told them not to drink. Their mother, their sister, their cousin, their wife, their kids, their bosses, the police, the courts. Everybody has said, look it, you're a nice guy. If you would just not drink, these things would not happen to you. And in spite of all those loved ones, we drink. You think it's any different now because we are members of Alcoholics Anonymous and I say you don't drink? That I'm going to help you by saying that? I say to you this, just read the book and do those things and see what happens. It's worked for a lot of people, Freddie, and it worked for me. I think it'll work for you. But if you want to argue about whether you're an alcoholic or not, I don't know if you're an alcoholic. I don't want you to be an alcoholic, Freddie. You don't think you're an alcoholic, then Freddie, you're in the wrong place. This is for alcoholics. This is for people who want it, not for people who need it. In the 12 and 12, it says a funny thing. Why all this insistence that every AA must hit bottom first? The answer is that few people will sincerely try to practice the AA program unless they have hit bottom. For practicing AA's remaining 11 steps means the adoption of attitudes and actions that almost no alcoholic who is still drinking can think of taking. Who wishes to be rigorously honest and tolerant? Who wants to confess his faults to another and make restitution for harm done? Who cares anything about a higher power, let alone meditation and prayer? Who wants to sacrifice time and energy in trying to carry AA's message to the next sufferer? No, the average alcoholic, self-centered in the extreme, doesn't care for this project unless he has to do these things in order to stay alive himself. I didn't make that up. I just read that from page 24 of a book called 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. This is not my opinion. This is the lifetime experience of the people who wrote this book. This is the experience of Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're wrong. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. And yet you'll hear people talk hours and hours with newcomers. I don't understand what powerless is. I have trouble with powerless. And they'll sit in cars, and they'll stand on street corners, and they'll try to tell them what powerlessness is. Tell them, you don't feel like you're powerless over alcohol? Well, let's see. I think they say something about that in the book. Let's see, Freddie, what the book says about that. You don't think you want to argue and tell me you don't understand, you can't agree with powerlessness? I think they had that experience once here. Let's see. Where is that? 21 on the bottom is right. Oh, yeah, Freddie, here's what it says. You don't know if you're an alcoholic. You don't know what powerless is, and you're having trouble with unmanageable. Okay, Freddie, let's see. Here's what they did. Here's what they've been doing for 54 years, Freddie. This is the only thing AA knows, Freddie. Well, let's see. Maybe this will work for you, Freddie. Freddie, we don't like to pronounce anybody an alcoholic. You got to diagnose yourself. Not argue, convince, debate. Go diagnose yourself. That's what we are, self-diagnostics. We diagnose ourselves. Here's what you do, Freddie. Step over to the nearest bar room, Freddie, and try some controlled drinking. Try to drink and stop abruptly. Try it more than once, Freddie. I mean, do it for years, Freddie. If you're like us, Freddie, it won't take you long to decide if you're honest about it, and it may be worth a bad case of the jitters for you to get that knowledge. Don't drink, Freddie, and go to meetings, Freddie. Yes, that's what we did. And if you want what we have, and you are having no problem with semantics, Freddie, you don't want to argue about powerlessness, you don't want to argue about unmanageable, then you don't have to do this, Freddie. But if you want to talk to me till 4 in the morning about what's manageable and what's powerless, we can solve this easier. I'll go to sleep and you go to the bar. This isn't because I don't love Freddie. I don't want to kill Freddie. I don't want to dilute the medicine so it tastes so good to Freddie that it doesn't cure him, but it slowly kills him. So that's all I think this book is AA. See, we don't have anything but this and what's in this and what's in our common experience. We are Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, you got to remember how this all came about. Bill Wilson did not recover from alcoholism through the taking of 12 steps. Think about that. There were no 12 steps when Bill Wilson got sober. He didn't take 12 steps and become sober. Bill Wilson had what he describes and what he believed to be a spiritual experience. I never had one. He had a spiritual experience, he says, laying in a hospital in a period in his life about the 782nd time this experience had occurred. It was hopelessness, helplessness, desperation. And he reports and reported that something strange happened, that he saw a light and felt different. Now, I think that's spooky stuff. And I don't know that if that ever happened or it didn't happen. It's not up to me to decide. Who am I? He says, from that moment on, the obsession to drink left him. He didn't take any 12 steps. And he left that hospital like a man with a mission. For the first time in his life, he was on a mission. Instead of being worried about how much money he was going to make, what kind of deals he was going to make, how much money Lois was going to make, where they were going to live, what kind of big shot he was going to be. Instead, his mission was to talk to other alcoholics. And he went all over New York saying, I had a vision, and I don't drink. And there's a power there that removed that obsession. And they said to him, no shit. Excuse me, I want to get to the bar. And nobody paid any attention to him. You think, and we all know Dr. Bob wasn't the first one he talked to. He talked to hundreds of drunks. He went into bars, into saloons, in jails, in hospitals, and he laid hands on them, and he prayed with them. And nobody ever got sober. Nobody. When he met Dr. Bob while he was in his missionary stage. But what got him to Akron was personal, goal-oriented. He went there to make money, to get his finance back in shape, and to get back into big time. He was going to get involved in this merger that when he made that work, he could go back to Wall Street and become a superstar stockbroker. That was for him he went to Akron, not to save anybody or to tell them about God. He didn't walk in there and say, listen, I saw God the other day, you ought to make this merger. He didn't talk about that. He said, how much money's in it for me? And listen, let's put this thing together and we all get rich and we get the hell out of Akron. And that deal fell through. And the first thing he thought about when that deal fell through was drinking. And he called Dr. Bob. He didn't call Dr. Bob, but he made the telephone calls that led to the meeting with Dr. Bob, because he had a unique thought that never in history had ever been thought before by anyone anywhere in the world. And there have been a lot of people in the world, a lot of them. No human being of the billions of people who have lived and died ever had this thought. And alcoholism has been with us for centuries. All recorded history records alcoholism. The earliest writings talk about people who have an obsession for fermented grapes and other things that seem to make them crazy. And no matter how crazy they get, they keep taking that stuff. We've always had alcoholism, all eternity. But for the first time in recorded history, a unique thought occurred. And this is how simple this is. And that thought led us to be here tonight. You know what that thought was? Maybe if I talk to someone like me, I won't drink. Not he won't drink, I won't drink. That thought had never ever been recorded. He made those calls to help somebody? No way. He helped those calls so he wouldn't walk in the bar in that hotel that night or down the street to buy a bottle and drink it in that room that night. He made that call to save his life. That's why we make 12-step calls, to save our life. Somehow, somebody started to plant the idea that we make those calls to save people. That's not true. Because if that's true, what's wrong with us? Why are we waiting for them to call? We know where they live. Why don't we go to their homes? This is Alcoholics Anonymous, you slob. Why don't we go to bars? Say, hey, look at that mirror. Jesus, look how you look. We have the answer. Why do we wait for them to call? Why don't we go out and help them? Bill tried it. He went out everywhere to share this magic with them. It didn't work. Nobody paid any attention to him. Nobody paid any attention. By this time, he's got some experience in a religious movement, a spiritual movement called the Oxford groups. In the Oxford groups, and the Oxford groups were wonderful. They were kind of like treatment centers are today. They're going to save everybody from everything. I'm not down in any treatment centers. It was like the Washingtonians. There was a movement years ago, prior to Alcoholics Anonymous, that thought through a spiritual way of life, we could save everybody and cure everybody and make everybody happy, whole, and useful under God. And that's what the Oxford people did. And Bill was introduced to the Oxford people, and you know what they told them? To read the Bible, accept God, make confession, make restitution, admit your powerlessness, make a decision, and practice right living. Sound familiar? And Dr. Bob had also had that experience. He was in that movement, and he never could stay sober. Now, when he met Bill, Bill told him about Bill. That so lit up Dr. Bob that Dr. Bob didn't drink. Ha, ha, ha. Dr. Bob stayed sober on fellowship. Ha, ha, ha. How long? Only long enough to get away from Bill. Dr. Bob, when he met Bill, said, "This man has something. God, I want what he has." And on fellowship and the strength of their communication back and forth, Dr. Bob didn't drink for a couple of weeks. And then Dr. Bob got drunk. In the worst place, at the worst time, in a medical convention that he went to show them his recovery and to preach to them his finding of God. I'm a new man, he went to that convention to say. I got religion. I don't drink anymore. Me and this guy from New York, we found a way to help alcoholics. He's drunk for 3 days. He didn't have any steps either. He came back. He had hit bottom. Bill said, "Don't drink anymore?" No way. Bill Wilson gave Dr. Bob his last drink. I didn't make that up. Bobby, I didn't make that up. That's recorded history. He said, "Listen, Bob, you better take this beer." Bob was sober when he gave him that beer. He said, "You can eat this beer." He was sober. He's going to do an operation. He also took some pills. He didn't tell him don't drink, go to meetings. He said, "You won't drink when you're ready to not drink. But in the meantime, you better have a drink." And he gave him a drink. Bob went in and did the operation. He came out and he never had another drink for the rest of his life. Because he had a desire to stop drinking. Bill Wilson never convinced Dr. Bob not to drink. He couldn't. Nobody has that power. It seems like we have that power, and he did have that power for a few weeks. And I've personally kept people in AA for months. I know that. Oh, I've given them so much love, and I've excused so much conduct, and I told them, gave them so much leeway that they stayed. Sometimes for months. I had a guy stay for 4 years. I knew the last 2 years he'd want to stay. I knew he didn't even have a desire to stop drinking or stay sober. He's just staying on the fellowship. I could fill his life with so many activities and so much ha-ha, so many good feelings. The only reason he's sober today is he went out and got real drunk and real scared and real sick. Now we never talk about whether or not he's an alcoholic. See? So it says here, we got to hit bottom. That's ourselves. Now, I don't know what powerless is, and I don't know what unmanageability is. It's what you say it is. You know what it is? It's called enough. Enough. Whatever you think enough is, that's what it is. If you haven't got enough, then go get enough. You have to. Not because I want you to hurt yourself or anybody here wants you. You got to do it. And the wonderful thing about it is you can make enough enough. You don't have to do those things to be enough. All you got to do is be willing enough to surrender enough. That's all. You don't even have to have a desire. All you got to do is have willingness to have a desire. Willingness precedes surrender. If you're having trouble with surrender and you're new, don't worry about surrender. Think about willingness. Are you willing to surrender? Once you're willing to surrender, surrender takes place. It's not a mental thing. It's not for smart people or dumb people, as I see it. What do you got to do to prove this idea of powerlessness and unmanageability? All you got to do is cut the crap I say to my people and look at the videotape. I have a videotape of me. If you have a VCR or you've seen one, you know it. You know, you go rent videos, movies, plug them in. I have one. It's here. I have permanently recorded the most obscene, the most painful, the most shameful, the deepest, most ugly secrets. I have portrayed and captured me living that life, that frustration. I have pictured and directed and captured on film the tears, the hopelessness, the secret prayers. God, what's wrong with me? And any time I want to think about unmanageable or powerless, I just sit back and watch my film. What's the argument? What is the argument? What's this deep philosophical conversation about powerless? Only people who do not want to stop drinking want to talk about what does powerless mean. I don't buy powerless. Know what they're telling you when they say that? I don't want what you have, and I'm not willing to go to any length to get it. And yet we spend hours and hours trying to convince them they're powerless over alcohol. What's unmanageable? For me, I had enough. You don't think you had enough? Then you got to have some more. And that's really all this book says about that step. Nothing else. Any questions about that? Anybody? Or comments? Disagreements? Doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not here to teach anything. I don't know if any of these things I'm saying are right. It's just how I believe it to be today. And I'm not saying you got to agree with this. It's just the accumulation of my almost 18 years, and maybe when I'm 19 years sober, I won't think this way. But I'll tell you, the only thing I got to hold on to, it got me here. You know, it got me from day one to day, whatever that multiplication of days times years would be. And I'm not supposed to be here. You know why I'm not supposed to be here? Because I'm too smart to be an alcoholic. I'm too intolerant to be a recovered alcoholic. I believe too much in the perfectionism. I want my way. I shouldn't be a recovered alcoholic. I'm opinionated. I'm a fault finder. I see all the faults in everybody around me, and I know what they should do. I've always known. God gave me a special talent. All my life I've looked at you and been able to see your faults. Guys like me should not make it. Okay? So, something happened. I got here, and I'm still here. And all I did was accumulate these beliefs and act upon them. But maybe they're not true. Any problem with powerlessness or unmanageable? Let me tell you what I do with the beginners. Every once in a while, with a big class like that, and I encourage them to say what they say. Because, you see, there's no right and wrong, and there's no good question or bad question. There's no dumb question. There's just an inquiry. So I say, well, you having trouble with this idea of powerlessness? I say, okay, let's suppose you have a 4-year-old little girl, 2 years old, 3 years old, I don't know. I'm not good with little kids. And this little girl, your name? Jerry? This little girl, Jerry, has never seen a match before. And I call her up and I say, Betsy, come here. Come here, Betsy. And I light this match. I say, Betsy, come here. Put your finger here, honey. Betsy won't know anything. She's never had this experience before. See? Until you have this experience, you don't know anything about this. I said, Betsy, put your finger here, honey. 2 days later, hi, Betsy. Come here, honey. Here, Betsy. Put your finger in this flame. Betsy goes running away. Mama! You know why? That's normal, controllable experience reaction. I'm an alcoholic. Ow. 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 Oh! I put my finger in the flame time and time and time and time again, knowing intuitively what Betsy knew, that it burns, but I believe this time it'll be different. Betsy never says, well, this time it'll be different. She runs from the flame. That's called powerlessness. And when you're powerless, you are really unmanageable. In my drinking career and the drinking careers of others that have spoken to me, and I don't think this is unique and everybody shares this because I don't, that's what we have done. We have gone back to that flame in spite of all the burn, of all the injury and all the pain that preceded experiences with that pain. We keep going back to it. And that isn't unmanageable. That isn't powerlessness. What the hell is that? Besides goofy. You want to talk about insanity? You having trouble with insanity, Charlie? Let's do the little Betsy routine again. Maybe you didn't get it the first time. This is a simple, wonderful program. It's so simple, it's laughable. And we make it such a big deal. That's the first step. Now, we can approach it a lot of different ways, and we can read, and it's approachable and discussable in many different ways from a different points of view. But bottom line, it's very simple. It's a having enough and not wanting to live like that anymore. That's all the semantics and definition we need. No. Does it have to be any harder? See, alcoholics don't like simple solutions. They like dramatic, long, involved secrets. And you say, that's all there is. Oh, shit. No, that's all there is. We don't have to argue about it. What do we resist it for? What are we trying to sell them? It's simple. That's it. That's as easy a way to look at the first step as there could be. I can't think of an easier way. Can anybody think of an easier way to look at it? I know there's a lot more scientific ways, and doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists and maybe greater intellects than I could think of more complex ways. But I don't want to look at the complex ways. I want to look at the simple ways. That's as simple as I can put it. And that little Betsy demonstration with that match drives home that point as clear as thousands of words that I otherwise used to say. And now in the beginners every year, I just do a little Betsy for them and let them look at that, and they know. They aren't smart as Betsy. Something's different about them. She's only 2 years old, and yet she was able to identify the pain in the flame. And once identified, she never went near the flame again. And here they are, 30, 20, 40, 50, and 70 years old, and they spent their whole life putting their finger in the flame and knowing and having vivid proof that it burns and it hurts and it's destructive. And they'll do it again and again and again. Alcoholics Anonymous calls that, among other things, defiance and self-centeredness. And I'm going to say this last thing, and then we're going to break for lunch. Alcoholics of my type have a so perverse an understanding and justification system. I think this is best described this way. Tearful wife, tearful children. Daddy, don't you see what your drinking is doing to us? Wife, we had a good marriage. Don't you see what your drinking has done to our marriage? Boss, you are a good worker. Don't you see what your drinking is doing to your job? Policeman, judge, we can go on and on with that. Mother, sister, brother, priest, rabbi, you're a nice guy. Don't you see what's happening in your life? Every area of your life is disintegrating. Your wife, your kids, your family, your friends, your job, your self-image, your reputation. Can't you see that? You shouldn't drink. That's the facts. You're the jury. I'm the alcoholic. You know what my answer is? Yes, I see that job and that marriage and those kids and those problems and those failures. I see that. You don't have to point that out to me. I know I'm unhappily married and I'm not a good father and my kids are out of control and my job's going down the tubes and I owe everybody money and I've got all these problems. Don't you see I know that? Of course I know that. Jesus, what are you telling me? Something I don't know. Well, they say if you see it, what's the answer? I know the answer. I'm an alcoholic. Here's the answer. That's why I drink. And I believe that. That's called alcoholism. That comes with powerlessness and unmanageability. What happens is our perceptions become upside down. We take the evidence and we see a justification. They say, you're dying because you're drinking. And we say, you don't understand. I'm drinking because I'm dying. Let's have some lunch. Hi. Yeah. You know, I took a walk during lunch. You know, the more I do this, the more frightened I become. No, I really do. And I tell you that you say to yourself, I hope they don't think you're telling them that you know. I don't know. And I don't want to make that impression. And if you have that impression, these are just what I think. I don't know that everything I say, and you don't have to agree with everything I say. This is just how I see it. And what Alcoholics Anonymous is the sharing of understandings. And this is my understanding. And if I'm wrong, I'll keep trying. And I don't know. But I don't come here as some kind of authority on anything. And I want to get that impression, because I don't want to start to believe that. My God, if I ever started to believe that I was an authority on this, I wouldn't have to do this because I'm an authority. Then I get goofy. Then I get so goofy, I'll think I don't need this anymore. And that I'm a finished product. And I can get on with my life. Bigger and better things. See, I'm here because I'm an alcoholic and I owe a debt to Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous and the people of Alcoholics Anonymous literally saved and reshaped my life. And I was told that if I didn't share that, I would lose it. And that's the only reason that I'm here and sharing those understandings or perceptions. Remember earlier we talked about Bill Wilson had this spiritual experience, and he went around telling everybody how he had this spiritual experience, and nobody paid any attention to him. And in the meantime, he's involved in the Oxford movement, which talked about spiritual way of life and changing. Dr. Bob had also been in that environment. After they met each other, they continued to go to meetings, the Oxford meetings. There they discussed the Bible and other things related to a search for a higher power and a commitment to change one's life. That's what they did. But they also started to share with alcoholics, one-on-one. After a while, they became more uncomfortable at these meetings, and they noticed something started to happen outside the meetings, alcoholics sharing with other alcoholics. They touched on what we now know as a miracle. Something special happens when an alcoholic talks to another alcoholic. There's a bond of trust. Now, what they did in the early years is it was a trial and error. It was an experimental thing. And they went around telling everybody that they had discovered a cure for alcoholism. And Bill kept talking about having had a spiritual experience. And Bob, I think it was Bob, I'm not an authority on history, but the early people said, but Bill, we haven't had a spiritual experience. So this doesn't mean anything to us. Over the years that followed, the next 2 or 3 years before the book Alcoholics Anonymous was published, what I think occurred was they had to describe what was working. And part of what was working is what they took or stole, I guess, from the Oxford movement, the Oxford group. They knew that Bill had this experience, but they knew they didn't. Some people say that Bill Wilson was divinely inspired when he wrote the book Alcoholics Anonymous. That may be true. I have no idea, because I don't know much about divine intervention. And I don't doubt it, but I can't prove it. But I know that I met, before he died, a man who knew Bill Wilson and was long sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, 44 years about when he died. He said, Frank, Bill could not have written that book. He said Bill was so crazy. Bill was so full of depression. Bill was such a womanizer. Bill got into such crazy things. He was so distracted. He could not have written that book, but he wrote it. He says, I got to believe that Bill Wilson was an instrument of God's grace. And when he said that to me, I says, who am I to say that didn't happen? What they did was they took all the combined actions of the people that made it, and they put it in this book as steps. They said, these people who made it have done this. It's our observation. The result of which is not sobriety. The result of the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is to effectuate a spiritual awakening. That's the goal of Alcoholics Anonymous. was a means by which every human being, me included, could experience and get the result of the experience of Bill Wilson's spiritual experience. And there's a difference between spiritual experience and spiritual awakening. And the purpose of the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, I think, is to effectuate a spiritual awakening. Now, people say that this step is more important than that step, and this step, maybe that's true for them. I don't know that there's any step more important than the other one. I'm surely convinced that unless you take the first, you can't take the second. I think the steps are a chain. The chain is as strong as its weakest link. And the chain leads from there to here. And you can't get from there to here without covering that distance. And the only way people like me can cover that distance is by covering the distance. And there's no shortcut. You just can't get to California from Chicago without going through Iowa or Missouri. It can't be done. You have to go through or over, but you have to pass. And you can't get well in Alcoholics Anonymous by going from step 1 to step 9 or step 12. It's not even logical. It's kind of like a birth control pill. You just can't take the 3rd pill and the 19th pill and sleep good at night. You got to worry. It doesn't work. You got to take them all. And if you get real worried and you haven't taken one for 10 days, and you look back on your conduct, it doesn't help to take 9 the night before you go to sleep. Okay? I mean, I'm not an authority on birth control pills, but and maybe that's a poor analogy. Now, the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are so simple, it's almost laughable. It's literally almost laughable. We talked about the first step, and the second step, I think, we don't take. In a strange sense. I know you hear, well, we take the second step, and I'm sure that's true. But on the flip side of that, I think the second step of Alcoholics Anonymous takes us. I really do. The second step of Alcoholics Anonymous, very simply, is we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We came to believe. We didn't do it. It happened to us. What happens, I think, in Alcoholics Anonymous is people like me come in, all kinds of denial and all kinds of resistance. And if we stay here long enough with an open mind, with some willingness and some based on some fear, because that's the only time I'm willing is when I've got fear or pain. See, I never react good to intellectual stimuli. I react best to pain. Okay? Now, I don't know how you are, but okay? Any big reformation that's ever occurred in my life has been right after a lot of pain. Never been after I read a good book. It's never been after I read some kind of a self-help book. I think those are good ideas when I read those self-help books. But I'll tell you something. When I'm in the corner and all those dogs are there at me, I never can remember what I read in the self-help book. Okay? I just can't. So in the step 2, when we talk about we come to believe, I think it's impossible to be here with an open mind based on desperation and watch the other people without having to somehow come to believe that there's a power. There's a power in these rooms. And if you're troubled with God, they don't say in step 2, they don't say came to believe that Jesus Christ is a power greater than yourself. It doesn't say Buddha. It doesn't say Martin Luther. It doesn't say anything. It says came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. In the beginning, I had a lot of trouble with God. Remember I told you that I had envisioned and come to understand that God was a punishing, vindictive God that punished people who offended him or her. Wouldn't that be something? If he turned out to be a she. Knowing me, I'd think he was a transvestite. But the truth of the matter is, because I'm a doubter, huh? Take off the dress, I want to see who you are. But, God, I'm sick. Really, I'll tell you. I'm never going to get, that's one of the nice things about AA, though. You never have to get real well. Just get a little better. You know? Every once in a while, that old youth comes sneaking in, you know. Okay. Oh, God. I forgot where I was. We've had everything at our meeting, but we haven't had a transvestite yet. Oh, God. I think I've sponsored a couple of guys that like to volunteer for that, though. I really do. I really do. Oh, God. Anyway, I had a lot of trouble with God when I came here because I really thought I was uniquely dirty. I remember when I was, before I got into alcoholics and before I got here, I really, if anybody ever was able to open me up and look at me, I thought I had so many secrets I had done and thought and wanted to do and did and led a life that was so offensive to any kind of a power that would be greater than myself, namely God, that I was uniquely dirty. I really did. Anything that ever had to do with sexuality, I perceived as sinful. And since I seemed to be attracted to that subject, I knew that I was uniquely, or I felt that I was uniquely bad. Just bad. And, you know, I had prayed. I knew that a power greater than me wasn't the answer before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I'll tell you something, even at the worst, I was able to pray. I'll tell you how sick I was. I'm able to pray and think dirty at the same time. Somebody else is that sick too, huh? And I remember having a lot of episodes like that before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, I'd really get so frightened thinking and doing and being involved in some things that I really felt were so degenerate, so weird. And you know, look, when later on I found out most of those things were just normal. Not right, not wrong, but human beings do those things. Human beings have always done those things, but I thought I had invented perversion or something, and I was so hard on myself. I mean, I misinterpreted I'm my own worst critic. See, I put myself under a microscope, and I keep turning the power on higher and higher until I can turn a snowflake into a bunch of little monsters. See, and that's what I do to myself, and I've always done that to myself, particularly before I came here. I'm so judgmental of myself. I can find such unworthiness about myself. And when people talked about God, I thought, hey, give me a break. I had prayed, I'd cried, I did everything in my later drinking career, asking, help me, do something. What's wrong with me? You know, I'll do anything. And I knew that didn't work. So when I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started hearing about God, I didn't pay much attention. But I'll tell you what, the word that bothered me was power. And I knew there was power in that room. I knew there was something happening in that room. I knew week after week after week that something was happening. These were not special people. They were not all wonderful. They were not without defects. But they had a twinkle, and they had the ability to laugh about their drinking. They had the ability to get up in front of a bunch of people they didn't know and tell things about themselves. They had a freedom. Can you imagine? We take for granted what we hear in Alcoholics Anonymous. Nowhere else in the world do people get up and reveal so much of themselves as we do. And we take it for granted. People just don't do that anywhere. You don't find that in the Rotary. People don't get up and say, you know, I've been a pervert most of my life. Let me tell you what I did. You know, we do that because of its sense of freedom. I mean, we're free to do that. And I don't talk about these things except this is an exercise of freedom. They don't mean anything to me. See, I've forgiven myself because it was pointed out to me that God has forgave me long before I ever forgave myself. And now I'm in the process that I know that I'm a human being and that I got that by staying here long enough to come to believe that there was a power. First it was the group. It was just the group for me. It was just the fact that something's happening here. I got to keep coming. There was a sense of okay here. I got a sense that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't different, that there were other people who understood. Then I progressed to a person. That person was called sponsor. I came to believe that some person had an insight that might help me. And he also had a strength that he derived from that group. So I saw a change. I saw a chain between the group and this person and me. See, I took a journey to find this God or stop arguing about God. It wasn't that easy. It wasn't hard because I resisted it. That's the only thing that made it hard. But I had to go from a group belief to a human belief to a God belief. And I didn't take that journey. That journey happened. I came, I listened, I didn't drink, I tried to do in a little way what they said, in a little way, and gradually I came to believe in a loving God. A loving God. Now, I have no idea, if you're having trouble, if you're new and you're having trouble with God, I don't know that I can help you, but I can tell you this. Two troubles. One, there is no God. Well, I don't know if there's a God. Maybe there is. I don't know what religion he is. See, I'm not one of those people who are blessed with a deep-seated religious belief. That doesn't mean I don't believe spiritually. See, I argue or I convince myself there's a God. He's more than a face and he's more than a history. I think God is good. I know that good is better than evil. Good feels better than evil. See? I know that love feels better than hate. See? I know that order is better than disorder. See? I know that. I know that kindness is better than hatred. I know that peace is better than war. All those things aren't accidental in my coming to understand the nature of God. I come to the belief that all those things are God. There is a power somehow that I can't understand. I don't think any human being could understand the nature of God. If God exists, the very essence of God would make him not subject to understanding by human. Because only God could understand the magnificence and power of God. You'd have to be God to be able to understand God. Human beings seek to understand God. Seek. Never will. In this life at least. And I don't know anything about the other. Although I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be there soon. And that's why I think I take this so serious and why I want to get better in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I don't want to argue about these steps. You see, most of my life is over. And I live by that creed. I'm going to be 52 years of age in September. Most of my life is over. I'm going to be dead soon. I'm not going to have any more time. See, I'm not a little kid that can pretend that I'm going to go on forever. Nobody goes on forever. This is a very short time. Some of us die at 40, at 30, at 20, at 50, at 60, at 70, 80. But I'm not going to be alive at 104. So at least half my life is over, and the insurance companies tell me 3/4 of my life is over. Because they got me dying at 71 years and 9 months and 3 days. They're betting on it. And when I pay those premiums, I'm betting against them. And I keep paying the premiums, they keep building bigger buildings. They must be winning more bets than they're losing. I don't know. So I have come to understand that I have got a short time. I want to be as happy as I can. I want to know enough as soon as I can. I want to get a feeling of comfort as soon as I can. Now, people think, I hear people say, well, that's morbid, thinking you're going to die soon. No. It's free. It frees me. It frees me from being able to justify distraction. The distraction of I want, I need, what's going to happen. 90% of everything I've ever worried about in my life has never happened. 98% of the things that I thought if I got I'd be happy, when I got I wasn't happy. And I spent most of my life wanting or worrying. Seeking. But not God, seeking. What's going to make me happy? I've never had it. I don't know what it is. I never had a sense of that until I came onto this step 2, and they said a power greater than yourself is going to restore you to sanity. I thought sanity is no problem for me. See, I had that videotape. I still have it. See, I'm not nuts enough to be able to stand up here and tell you, in my case, I just drank too much too often. Other than that, I'm a nice guy. And as soon as I stopped drinking, I became a nice guy. I've been happy and comfortable ever since. It has not been the way it is for me. So based on that idea of, I've never argued with insanity. I pay that tape. I know I'm insane. I know I was insane. You know it says here, just a little something in what it says. Sanity. Now I can see. They were right. They said, you don't stop, you're going to go blind. Sanity is defined as soundness of mind. Yet no alcoholic soberly analyzing his destructive behavior, whether the destruction fell on the dining room furniture or on his own moral fiber, can claim soundness of mind for himself. If we literally replay the secret portions of our lives in our minds, how could we argue with soundness of mind and the fact that we did not lose or not have soundness of mind? I mean, I can't understand that. I mean, it's just that simple. It's just that simple. I mean, I look back on my drinking career and my living career prior to and during drinking. There wasn't anything sane about that. The guy that keeps putting his finger in that match when that little girl just had to do it once and never had to do it again. The guy that did that over and over and over and over and over again. The guy who promised himself every time, I won't do this again, and meant it. Do you know, during my drinking career, if you would have given me a lie detector test, when I said to me, I won't do that again, that test would have shown that I was telling the truth. And I did again. And 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 each time in between the doing it again, I'd promise I wouldn't do that again, or I'd want not to do it again, or I'd pray not to do it again, or I hope not to do it again. I did it again. And again. And again. I can't argue with this. This word insanity doesn't trouble me. That can't be soundness of mind. So I don't argue. I mean, I never found it any difficult. And yet sometimes people want to make these big deals about, I don't like that insanity part. I don't either, but I was. You know, if I had a choice, maybe I wouldn't have been. But nobody ever told me I had a choice. You know, I didn't go through that line, that production line, you know. Well, you want a little insanity? No, I'll pass insanity. I'll take some comfort instead. I just was insane, maybe. I don't know. I don't know that I was. It's not a legal term and it's not a medical term. For me, it's a feeling just like that bottom was a feeling. It's simply a feeling. And if you have that feeling, that's all you got to have. You don't have to argue or think about it or need any more. the third step, and we're just going to, this is an overall view, folks. This is not a study, and we're not going to, I mean, this may not be what you wanted or what you expected, and this is all that I'm going to do. The next guy can read the book to you, and we can all underline. And that's fine, and I don't mean to make light of that. Those are wonderful. The book study groups are wonderful. This is just what we're doing here today. The net result of this, hopefully, is this: that somebody in this room who has not taken the steps will do so before they leave Alcoholics Anonymous. That's my purpose of being here. That if just one person tries before he leaves or she leaves to do this and stays, then some good will have come from this. And I'm just trying to demonstrate through my experience what happened to me and how easy these things are, to encourage somebody who's a week sober or 13 years sober and knows secretly they're not going to be here much longer, to try it, because it doesn't hurt. That's really what this is about. So don't be disappointed that we're not reading all these things. You can do that. I do what this lady does. I underline and I write notes in these books. Now, some of these things are written 15 years ago. And when I see what I wrote, I know how crazy I was. It was so important that I'd write something down. And then years later I learned, I said, wow, are you weird? But at the time it was like finding a pearl. And I tell my people that where I come from, I say, this is your book. Mark it up, write it up, diagram it, underline it, write in it, put arrows, do anything you want. It's your book. It's your book. Okay? And this is not my book. I've got so many books. When I go to conference talking, a lot of places I go, they give me a big book, and they put a cover on it, and I just grab one of a whole pile. My book's falling apart. I mean, it's like some raging maniac been tearing at it. Well, that's exactly who's been reading it, I'll tell you. Step 3 is the easiest thing in the world. It's painless. It's painless. If you can stop arguing about what God looks like, or who He is, or she is, or what it is, or what religion it is, and it's just a force of good, and you know that force of good has somehow touched the people around you, and they have told you He's available to touch you too. All you got to do, very simple, all you got to do is make a decision. Period. It's the end of the step. Simply make a decision to turn your will and your life over the care of God as you understand Him. If I were writing this book, I would have added, here's how my third step would have read. Now, if they ever ask me to do this, this is what I'm going to do. And they never will. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him or didn't understand Him. So I would have wrote. Now, what's the big deal about making a decision? For perfectionists, we resist that because we think that means total surrender. And we know we're not capable of making a total surrender because we've never been able to make a total anything. That's not what this says. This says just make a decision to try. Make a decision to try. To try what? Be perfect? Be non-human? To be godlike? No way. Make a decision to turn our lives and will over the care of God. His care. That's all. You know what that says? Decide to let God help you. Now what's such a big deal about that? I mean, why is that so hard? Why do people like me resist doing that? That's all it says. That's what it means. I made a decision to turn my life and my will, turn my life and my will over to the care of God. This says, I decide, God help me. Now what's so hard about that? Why did I resist that? Why did I talk about I'll be a doormat, I won't be able to make any decisions, and people will step on me and I'll be like just go ahead, slap me. I've turned my will and life over to care of God. I mean, I really thought that. I argued when I was a newcomer. You would have hated me as a newcomer. I almost died because of that. See, I almost didn't make it in Alcoholics Anonymous. See, I'm not as... I've made more mistakes in Alcoholics Anonymous than I should have, and still stayed alive in AA. Because, see, I came in here with a lot of misconceptions and bad motives. I really did. And when they started talking about it, I remember arguing with some old-timer about, if I turn my life and will over to care of God, I won't even know how to dress in the morning. I'll have to ask God, well, what suit should I wear? And God, should I go to work today or shouldn't I go to work? And he looked at me like I was nuts. And I was. But the truth of the matter is, it's very simple. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understand Him. This force for good, this force that has helped the others, please help me. And I'll try to do what's right. That's all it is. I'll try to do what's right. And I don't know what's right for you. And the person next to you at the meeting doesn't know what's right for you. God knows what's right for me, and God speaks to me. Now, don't get scared. This is not spooky stuff. God speaks through me, through my conscience. I know what's right. I always know what's right. When I do something that churns my insides, I can't kid myself. I know what's right. I'm married. To have an affair is wrong. If I want to have an affair, I should be single. Then I can have all the affairs I want. But before I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought my wife was married. But I always felt the pain of the contradiction, no matter what I called it, infatuation or love. I always felt the contradiction here. I knew it was wrong. If I don't love this lady and I love this lady, I should leave this lady and get that lady. No. I keep them both. Huh? Try to balance that for a while. See how much spirituality results from that. I know that I can't be into pornography and grow spiritually. I know there can't be any spiritual growth through watching X-rated films. I don't have to have God tell me that. I don't have my sponsor tell me that. I feel that in my guts. I know what it feels like. I know to create a false sense of excitement and perversion. Both may be, I don't know, exciting, but it's gut-wrenching because it's secret. I know it's wrong. I know it's contrary to mature, normal growth in any sense of spiritualism. I don't need anybody to tell me that. That's how God speaks to me. I know I'm not supposed to steal. I know there's nothing spiritual about slapping your wife. I don't need anybody to tell me that. I got something called a conscience. God speaks to that. I refuse sometimes to listen to that. Doesn't mean I don't hear it. I just refuse to listen to it. And when I turn my will and my life over to care of God, it's very simple. I'm going to try the best I can. I'm going to try with your help not do that. And sometimes I do it. I'm going to do it. Not necessarily these things I've just talked about. I mean, I pick these things in a dramatic way to drive home a point. I don't mean to limit and to focus on that kind of stuff, and please understand that. Sometimes it drives home a point, sometimes it's not such a off-the-target point, because those are some of the things that seem to bother people like me, the inconsistency of living a double life.
Now, when you turn your life and will over the care of God, as you understand, doesn't mean you never do those things. Doesn't mean you won't be tempted to do those things, and doesn't mean that you sometimes will not, or you'll refuse to listen to that voice, and you'll still do them. You know why you're going to do that sometimes? Because you're not God. You're a human being. You're a human being. Human beings don't have the power of God. God is all good. God is all just. God is all loving. God is all knowing. I'm not and never will be. And maybe you will. But I've never known anybody that's turned out God-like. So if the resistance to turn your life and will over the care of God is because you feel that then you'll never be able to do those things, or if you do those things it'll all be for naught, that's silly. Remember, I think very simply. The third step is, very simply, I decide today, based on the life I've led and the power I've seen here, to ask that power to take my life and help me. That's all. To help me try to live better and try to hear the voice of my conscience and try to muster up enough strength to follow it. The prayer here is simply, what's God's will for me? Now, I know every day of my life what God's will for me. God's will is never for me to be a pompous, arrogant know-it-all. God's will for me is not to count my money every day or look at my bills every day or to seek my job or this or that. That's not God's will for me. God's will never been that. Those are distractions that I've allowed to eat up most of my life. And now that most of my life is over, I don't have time for those distractions. I want simple things. The simple sense of feeling okay. I want what they said in that foreword. I just want to feel whole and safe and useful. And I want to have the obsession to drink continue to be removed. That's all I want. And that's done through these steps. Now, it hasn't been hard for the newcomer here. 1, 2, and 3 hasn't been so hard. I can't. He can. Let him. Big deal. Boy, that was tough, wasn't it? I can't. He can. Let him. Then we're at step 4. Right away. Not a month later, a year later. Because if you really want it and you really believe, like we said earlier, the doctor says you're going to be blind unless you do those 12 things. You're going to say, doctor, I'll do them right now. When can I start? See? Now, if you're that serious about our drinking, if I'm that serious about my recovery, it's time to 3. It leads right to 4. And they're in an order to do what? They work in an order. They don't work so well out of order. Because they flow, one flows into the other. One flows into the other. Okay? They do. Think about it. Read it. You'll see it yourself, because you'll do this. You'll be reading this by yourself. You're going to do it if you want to do it. And if you do, you'll see they flow in the other. After the third step, after you're able to do that, then you have to take some actions. Continue to take action. Now they say, what we got to do is we got to find out who you are. You got to see yourself, and how you're going to do that, kid, is you're going to take a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper, and you're going to write a searching and fearless moral inventory. And a lot of us say, not today. I've told my sponsor a couple of those things. I told him a lot about me. I don't need to do that. Well, maybe you don't. But I'll tell you what the history of Alcoholics Anonymous is. The history of Alcoholics Anonymous is that people that don't. People that don't do, don't recover. People that don't do increase the chance that they won't stay. And if they do, they stay less happily than others. What we do in the 4th step is very simple. We get it out. We face it. It's no big deal. I have heard to date, I don't know, I've never recorded, but I know I've heard 100 fourth steps. I've had at least 100 fourth steps read to me. I sponsor a lot of people and have a high profile where I come, and a lot of people trust me. I don't know why, but they do. And so I'm going to tell you a secret. They're all the same. If you're new and you wonder if the person you choose is going to tell, I don't even remember. They're so similar. They're all the same. All they do is expose their humanity. My humanity, their humanity, your humanity. Do you know, of all the fourth steps that I have heard, let's suppose, I'm just going to make, this is just an example. It's nothing to do with reality. Let's suppose that a fourth step was 27 pages long of legal size paper. Let's just take that as that's going to be this fourth step we're going to look at. And that's what we're going to call it, the average fourth step that has been read to me. Do you know how many pages contain drinking? Half of one page. No, what they say? Can I take this off? What they say? They talk about feelings as a child. They talk endlessly about sexual secrets, guilt, shame to do with sexual. They talk about hatreds, painful hatreds of loved ones, mothers, fathers, injuries to others that they either sustained or that they either delivered. They talk about criminal sometimes things. That's what they talk about. Talk about human. Talk about human. And the most wonderful thing happens in the process of doing that fourth step. You see it for what it is. It's you. They say in the book and in other writings that you also can put down positive things. I didn't put any positive things down when I wrote my fourth step. I couldn't think any positive things. And when I tried to write positive things, I felt phony. I mean, what am I going to write? I'm a good father? I never come home. I'm a loving father? Well, if you love your kids, why do you have a girlfriend? Why don't you be with your kids instead of your girlfriend? Couldn't do that. I'm a good lawyer? How can I be a good lawyer? I'm drunk the night before the case. I got the shakes when I go to court. I'm so afraid the judge is going to smell me, I can't